We have this idea that creativity is some kind of magic, right? But what if it's not magic at all? What if it's a code, one that we can actually learn? In this explainer, we're going to ditch the myths, dive into the actual science of how creativity works, and give you the tools to unlock your own. Okay, so this quote, it just nails that feeling, doesn't it? The sense that an idea just arrives from somewhere totally outside of yourself. Like you're just a channel and it's flowing through you. It's this beautiful, kind of mystical experience. And honestly, it's the reason we've built up all these romantic stories about where creativity really comes from. So, is that what it is? Is creativity just a lottery, a lightning strike of pure genius that you're either lucky enough to be born with or not? I mean, for centuries, that's been the main story we've told ourselves, a story about muses and divine inspiration and this untouchable innate talent. But is any of that really true? All right, let's just tear down some of these myths one by one. First, that eureka moment. Turns out it's not a sudden flash from nowhere. It's usually the very last visible step after a long, quiet mental process. Then there's the lone genius. Total fiction. Real creativity is collaborative. It's always building on the work of others. The myth of originality? Get this. Every single new idea is really just a remix, a new connection between things that already exist. And the biggest, most damaging myth of all, that it's all about inborn talent. This one's the worst, because it makes us think that if we're not a natural, then hard work doesn't even matter. But here's the thing, and this is the big shift. Science tells a totally different and frankly, way more empowering story. Creativity is not some gift that's handed down to a chosen few. It's a cognitive skill. It's a way of thinking, a process that you can actually understand, practice, and get way, way better at. So if we're going to treat this like a skill, we need a good, clear definition. And I love this one from Howard Gardner because it just cuts right through all the fluff. Creativity is the ability to create new things or, and you got to hear this part, do old things in new ways. It's about that combination of novelty and usefulness. And that is something anyone, anywhere can work on. Okay, so if it's a skill, does that mean some people are just naturally wired to be better at it? Let's start by looking at personality. Researchers have literally spent decades trying to figure out if there's a creative personality. And what they found is, well, it's absolutely fascinating. Take a look at this. What's so cool here is just how clear the data is. This table from a big 2020 study shows the links between the big 5 personality traits in creativity. You can see agreeableness and neuroticism, not much of a link. Extroversion, maybe a little bit. But look at the 2 huge standouts. Openness to experience is a strong yes, and conscientiousness is actually negative. Let's dig into that, because that's where it gets really interesting. So, openness to experience is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. People who are high in this trait have this deep, driving curiosity. They're the ones trying new foods, going to new places, and most importantly, they're constantly seeking out new ideas. On a brain level, this trait is linked to our dopamine pathways, the reward centers, so their brains are literally getting a dopamine hit when they learn or experience something new. And that just perfectly explains why it's the bedrock of creativity. To connect ideas in new ways, you first have to have a massive library of ideas to pull from. Openness is the engine that builds that library. Okay, but let's talk about the real head-scratcher here, that being less conscientious is linked to higher creativity. Now, this doesn't mean you should be lazy or unreliable. What it suggests is that being super rigid, following all the rules to the letter, and just having this relentless focus on one single goal can actually get in the way of the creative process. Creativity needs space. It needs room to wander, to take weird detours, to make a mess, and to follow a hunch that doesn't have a clear destination. If you're too focused on just getting the task done in the most orderly way possible, you can accidentally shut down that crucial, messy, exploratory phase. But personality is just one piece of the puzzle. What's the thing that actually pushes us to create? The fuel for that creative engine is motivation. And when it's the right kind of motivation, it can get you into that incredible mental state that we call flow. So, what's crucial here is the type of motivation. Intrinsic motivation. That's when you do something for the pure love of doing it. The interest, the challenge, that deep satisfaction you get from the work itself. Extrinsic motivation is all about the outside stuff, money, grades, praise from others. And this isn't just a theory. A researcher named Teresa Amabile spent decades on this, and what she found is a game changer. Intrinsic motivation is like rocket fuel for creativity, and focusing on those external rewards, it can literally snuff your creativity out. The best example? In one study, art experts consistently said that artists' personal projects, the stuff they did for love, were way more creative than their paid commissions. And when that intrinsic motivation is cranked up to the max, you can hit this amazing state that I'm sure you felt before, which the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi famously named flow. It's that feeling of being totally in the zone, where you're so absorbed in what you're doing that everything else, time, hunger, even your own ego, just completely melts away. The work itself literally becomes the reward. Have you ever felt this, maybe playing music or writing code or even just in a really deep conversation? You're so locked in that your sense of self, all your little worries, they just vanish. Time gets all weird. The science behind this is so cool. Our brains can only process about 110 bits of information per second. Just listening to me talk takes up about 60 of those. When you're in a deep state of creative flow, you are using all 110 bits for that one task. There is literally no mental bandwidth left over to worry about your problems or check the time. Your ego just goes offline. Okay, so we've got the who and the why. Now for the fun part, the how. How can you actually encourage these states and get your brain thinking more creatively whenever you want? Let's build a practical toolkit of simple, science-backed hacks you can start using like today. And these aren't just guesses, they're backed by real research. First up, go for a walk. A Stanford study found walking can boost your creative output by 60%. 60. Second, give yourself some rules. A blank page can be paralyzing, but if you add a constraint, like write a story in exactly 50 words, it forces your brain to find clever new solutions. Third, let yourself get bored. Let your mind wander. This actually fires up your brain's default mode network, which is basically its imagination center. And finally, try something called open monitoring meditation. Instead of focusing on one thing, you just kind of notice whatever thoughts pop into your head without judging them. It's been shown to be amazing for generating a ton of new ideas. And here's a really cool mental trick that shows just how powerful a tiny shift in perspective can be. It's called psychological distance. When we're too close to a problem, we get stuck in the weeds. But researchers found that if you just imagine the problem is for someone else, or that it's happening a year from now, you come up with way more creative solutions. So next time you're stuck, just pretend the problem isn't yours. This tiny little mind game can unlock a whole new way of thinking. All right, so having a great toolkit is awesome. But what good is a toolkit if your workshop is a complete mess, right? We all have these psychological roadblocks that can kill our creative thinking before it even gets started. So let's name them, because once you can see them, you can start to tear them down. So you want to guarantee you never have another creative idea again? Easy. Just follow these 5 simple steps. First, be terrified of failure. See every little mistake as the end of the world. Second, be terrified of rejection. Let what other people might think dictate everything you do. Third, never ever change. Your comfort zone is safe and warm, and it's where new ideas go to die. Fourth, be passive. Stick to the exact same routine every day and avoid anything new. And fifth, rationalize everything. Justify every mistake instead of actually trying to learn from it. Do these 5 things, and I promise your creativity will grind to a halt. I want you to really let this sink in for a second. We have to completely change how we think about failure. It's not the opposite of success. It's a non-negotiable part of the process. Every single creative breakthrough you've ever admired was built on a mountain of failures and different versions that didn't work. They're not dead ends. They are data points. They are the stepping stones that actually show you the way to the thing that works. So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? Creativity is not some magical lightning strike you just have to sit around and wait for. It's more like gardening. You can't force a flower to bloom, but you can prepare the soil, you can give it water and sunlight, and you can pull out the weeds. You create the conditions for growth. It's about consciously building a habit of openness, finding what truly drives you, using a toolkit of mental habits, and being brave enough to tear down your own barriers. If you do that, the ideas, they'll come. So the final question isn't, are you a creative person? The real question is, what conditions will you create?